go, guys. 3, 2, 1, start.
Cinerama was the first of the modern-day widescreen film processes. For all practical purposes, every film made up until 1952 was in the 133 Academy aperture. And Cinerama was the first to break that mold and have a picture that was actually an aspect ratio of 276 to 1. It was something that audiences had never seen before.
The appeal of Cinerama was the fact that it was so different. People up to that point had only seen this square image at the other end of the hall or the theater.
And when that curtain opens, it was just amazing. Here I was, everything in my whole peripheral vision was filled with this incredible moving image. And I was part of the picture. It was terrific.
So there's 3 panels. They're shot with a specialized camera that has 3 lenses in it and 3 magazines running.
And we refer to them as Abel, Baker, and Charlie panel, ABC.
3 cameras, each with a 1,000-foot mag, combined into one system.
And 3 pieces of film running at a higher film rate than had ever been used before.
And shot a panoramic view of 146 degrees.
With multiple channel sound all surrounding, all around you.
And it was played in theaters that were especially retrofitted to show Cinerama on a deeply curved screen.
It's not like anything else you've ever seen or experienced before.
You almost can't go wrong in Cinerama. In a sense, you can't, because there's this big wide image that's in front of you and it's got all this detail and sharpness.
What we see today in IMAX, in CinemaScope, owes its birth to Cinerama.
I guess Cinerama does that to you. It just makes you want to think big.
It takes 5 projectionists to run a Cinerama film. 1 projectionist for each of the 3 projectors, somebody to run the sound, a picture control engineer to go from projector to projector and do minor adjustments and so forth.
It takes 5 guys to run this thing, and you, the audience member, feel special that there's all these 5 guys up there cranking away trying to make it work.
Yes, it's probably not very practical for most movies. However, just like IMAX, for certain types of photography, for certain kinds of pieces, this is spectacular.
Ultimately, Cinerama is a very expensive process to do because you're running 3 times the amount of film.
So the chances of something breaking down is 3 times as much.
It was eventually abandoned because they went to Hollywood with it. Traditional Hollywood crews had a lot of problems in working in Cinerama.
The Cinerama Camera Company, along with Panavision, had come up with a process called Ultra Panavision, which was a 70mm process with an anamorphic squeeze.
So everyone figured, well, it's going to be easier if we just do the rest of these movies in 70mm and forget about this 3-panel crap.
Okay, we're ready for another one?
The Cinerama process was certainly on its way to being forgotten. From a household word to, what is Cinerama? I never heard of it.
And as we were coming up on the 60th anniversary of Cinerama, we knew that we wanted to do something special.
Wouldn't it be great to shoot something with the old camera? Could we even get it up and running? Is that even possible?
The Cinerama cameras had not been touched since 1962.
So I called a director of photography friend of mine named John Hora and said, do you know anybody who fixes up old cameras? And he said, yeah, I've got the perfect guy for you, and his name is Ken Stone.
We picked the one that appeared to be in the best shape.
The camera itself was structurally in pretty good condition. You know, they made things pretty well in the 50s. They made them to last. I don't know what this would go for on eBay, but certainly $5.
We started with the idea of shooting a new film in 3-strip Cinerama.
Instead of taking place in an expansive environment like all over the world in Switzerland and Egypt next to the pyramids, it all takes place in LA.
Let's just find those really rare things in Los Angeles that there are to do that are practically free or very inexpensive and kind of quirky and offbeat. And so I came up with an idea similar to the travelogue called Cinerama Holiday.
In the second Cinerama film, Cinerama Holiday, the film ends up with the principal actors seeing a performance of This is Cinerama, and they actually saw themselves in the picture.
And you know, at first when I heard it's called In the Picture, I didn't know what that meant. Now I know exactly what it means.
So we're not talking a particularly brilliant script here, but we're talking a Cinerama experience. Was that dramatic?
Everyone involved was there because they really wanted to do this.
It's such a historical thing, and everyone was happy to be there and wanting to be there and excited about the process and excited about the camera.
Stanley Livingston, of course, has a special place in our Cinerama history as being a child actor, and Hollow West was one.
I'm sort of like the tour guide for this particular piece, so I was praying my memory was still good.
And he'd forget his lines. I guess it's because he's so much older than me.
Okay, guys, once again.
First of all, the camera it's like a character on its own.
I sort of bonded with the camera. I called it Abel Baker Charlie. That was my nickname for it because of 3 panels.
It's a boat anchor. It is a beast.
Moving it around, it does not move quickly.
The Cinerama camera is nothing like we see today.
It's all metal and gears. There's no plastic parts in a Cinerama camera. And it's a testament to the crew because the thing weighs a couple 100 pounds.
And then you add 3 automobile batteries to it to run it, and the other equipment that's associated with shooting something on location. And we were carrying around about 2,000 pounds of equipment every place that we went.
This camera was built and designed in 1952 with slide rules and pencils, and it works extremely well. We did not have one camera problem throughout the entire shoot.
But we really didn't know what we were getting into until we rolled for the first time.
The people that actually shot Cinerama are no longer with us, so we had to learn from scratch.
Cinerama, you do not have a zoom lens. You can't change lenses. It's all one lens. If you want to move something, you have to move the camera or move the actors to the camera.
Because it's so high, its center of gravity is also very, very high. So tilting becomes a very, very difficult issue.
You cannot see what is being filmed like you can on a reflex camera. In order to see what the lens is actually seeing, you have to take off the 3 magazines and put a view tube into each of the 3 aperture holes in the camera.
But because of a parallax difference of at least 6 inches between the top viewing finder and the lenses, you're guessing at times. The only way we could actually see the results was to project them at the Cinerama Dome.
But directing a Cinerama movie is you can't hear, you can't see, because you have to stand behind the camera. So you can't really see if they've hit their marks or not. So directing a Cinerama movie, you look under the tripod and look at feet.
One of the problems that we had on location was getting synchronous sound. The Cinerama camera makes quite a bit of noise, and the blimps, the soundproof blimps that were made for that camera, have long since been lost.
There's kind of a distance between the actor and the camera normally when you're filming, and that line kind of gets crossed a little bit in Cinerama. It's kind of hard to be in your own world when you have a Volkswagen with 3 lenses like right here, and then coming out of the thing is just this grinding noise. It's definitely loud, it's big, and it's in your face.
So everything that you film on set, the audio has to be completely re-recorded in post.
Hey. Hi. Hey.
Everything, became a little mini adventure, packing up and basically getting all of our camera equipment and all of our key crew literally in a truck and a van and caravanning off to location.
And action!
In the picture begins with the Mulholland Drive Hollywood overlook.
Great place if you want to see the city of LA.
It was a very cold, very foggy day, and we're talking about, you can see this, you could see very much, actually.
Fortunately, we got a pretty decent day. Not one of those perfect days, but pretty decent.
I could just picture in my mind what a beautiful shot that was going to look like.
It's a very popular tourist place, so we had several busloads of tourists coming and going as we shot.
We didn't have that much control over the property, so you'd have a lot of tourists pull up in their cars and they get out, oh, the camera, and then they didn't know whether to look or look away. Anyway, that probably got on Dave's nerves, I'm sure, because every time you thought you had your shot right before you'd say cut, somebody else would be in the background.
So we have a shot with the Cinerama camera in the back of the van, and Stanley takes off driving down the hill.
Poor Doug Knapp crashed into the very small space in the back with the big old camera.
As he's going down these curves, it's wanting to move one way or the other, and so I'm just hanging on for dear life. Fortunately, that little run down the hill didn't last all that long.
Angel's Flight was a wonderful location, and we wanted to make sure it was there because it's just one of those iconic LA things.
It's a good example of what the original Cinerama shows would have done.
The cable car was actually operating and functioning that day, so we sort of had to time it with the cable car always going up or down. Okay, hold, here it comes. Okay, action. It's coming down, and we'd walk into the scene.
Are they really getting that thing, all those extras, everybody in the cast, and half of the crew in that car?
The steps are very steep to load. The rear door of the train car, or funicular as it's called, is very, very narrow. And of course, Ken Stone put these handlebars on the camera that stick out quite a long distance away from the center of the camera so we could carry it. But of course, going through doors, we have to turn the camera, so it became very awkward trying to squeeze a 10-gallon camera into a 5-gallon bucket.
As you go up the track, there's a sudden sharp jolt to the right and then another one back to the left, and every time that would happen, the camera would shake. I was hanging on, David was on one side hanging on, Lance was hanging on.
I guess we went up and down about 200 times, so I'm done with Angel's Flight, let's put it that way. I've been on it enough now.
Anybody got a cattle prod?
We went to Griffith Park to ride the merry-go-round.
The people at the merry-go-round were wonderful, let us do anything we wanted to.
And we got to ride the carousel all day long. Who doesn't want to ride a carousel all day long? That was really fun.
The key to the merry-go-round is we have to counterbalance it because it's suspended. So when we have a 300-pound camera over here with 3 guys, we have to have 3 extras on the other side. Yeah, or you have the end of Strangers on the Train, crash.
Following the merry-go-round, we packed up, went up to the observatory up top.
The observatory is certainly one of those iconic LA almost logos in a way. That building just stands out.
Getting the camera up there was a bit of a challenge, but not too bad because there are ramps. So we could actually put the camera together and, for the most part, dolly it around the whole observatory area.
I was surprised how close we were actually to the Hollywood sign. That was one of the lines, and I turned around and there it was.
Action! I was befriended by this whole group of people in San Pedro who control these ships called the Exie and Irving Johnson. And so I called up a friend of mine one day and I said, is there any chance we could shoot something in Cinerama? We're going to make a little Cinerama movie. Can we shoot on one of those ships? I mean, can we get on there like 10 minutes and shoot something and real quick? We'll get out of your hair right away. That evolved into 3 full days.
I think I was probably the most excited about that shoot, for the whole shoot.
The ships were beautiful. I didn't know really. I don't know what a brigantine is until we got there. And I was like, oh, wow, sailboat.
On that sailing ship, I had a blast. It was a real epic experience.
And it's just so pretty because it was picture perfect that day. It was just pristine blue sky.
And we got to go out into the bay and watch both these beautiful brigantine schooners doing maneuvers among themselves. And it was just fun dealing with changing winds and feeling the kind of shifting of the camera a little bit. seeing the sails blow over. There are various moving shadows that all really add to that experience of movement.
That was probably the highlight of the whole movie, and I imagine most of the crew will say that too, is being on that ship, assuming you didn't get seasick, which a couple of the cast did, and just experiencing that sailing thing, and having that giant camera there, and the shots are, of course, beautiful. They came out terrific.
That was probably my favorite part of the film, but also the worst part of the film for me personally.
A lot of the scenes that you see on the boat, I'm just fine, and everybody else are various shades of green.
She started swaying back and forth.
Oh, it is a little rougher than we're used to. Oh, yeah. Oh, boy. Oh, yeah.
And that was actually when we were shooting the sweet love moment between Matt and myself.
Paul and I, we have what we call our love scene on the boat. And by the time that came about, I was just really seasick.
I'd say that was probably the most challenging part of the shoot. Like trying to look like I was happy and in love and not barfing.
It's all I can do to keep from throwing up on you. Don't take it personal. I'm so sick, but somehow you just focus and get yourself together.
It was a rough day.
It was nice when we shot the final scene of the movie on the inside of the Cinerama Dome.
Shooting Cinerama in the Cinerama Dome, that's like Cinerama coming home to itself in a way.
The dolly shots were nice. I always like to see the camera move. It moved when we were out in front of the dome, and they moved it when we were in the arc light, and it felt different to have it not just standing right there in your face.
That was quite historical to be shooting Cinerama inside the Cinerama Dome.
And who's in the lobby but Debbie Reynolds?
That was just amazing. You know, she's a legend.
David gave her the script, and I think she looked at it for 30 seconds and had it down cold.
Yeah, I think that was a surprise for me, reuniting with Debbie Reynolds on this particular piece. Brings closure to my life, because I worked with her in How the West Is Won.
Sure, I'm going to make you starve you yet. It kills me, and it is.
Please do.
Working with Dave was wonderful. He's very focused. He knows what he wants. You can tell that he has such a passion for Cinerama.
So much of Cinerama is unique to Cinerama that he had to prepare things in a way that he could do probably 4 jobs at once.
Dave really knows his stuff, so he seemed to be very comfortable with the cameras and the processes.
He was always right there involved in everything that you were doing.
You could just tell he was so excited to be there, and it kind of got us all going.
And he just held everything together. He held everybody up.
You could really feel his passion for the technology, this sort of retro technology.
He looked like a kid in a candy shop to me. He really, really loves it.
When I close my eyes, I still see him holding up that contraption that has I don't know what it was, but that's how he set up the shots. I just called it the shot setter-upper.
He's good at it. He's the go-to guy for anything having to do with Cinerama or the history of Cinerama.
So I think Dave did a great job directing, producing, writing, editing, which is totally beyond me how he's able to do that.
He's syncing the sound, he's cutting, and don't forget, when you cut Cinerama, it's cutting ×3. So he has his work cut out for him.
The editing of In the Picture was more difficult than you could ever imagine, and because there's no moviola, there's no video device you can look at to see if you're in sync. Again, you're operating totally blind. So now how do you cut the film? You have to physically cut the film. You can't do it in a digital realm.
So he is basically matching everything by eye to the video that he's done. He shot off the screen. And that's just a miracle.
That's a wrap. It's a wrap. WRAP.
To be part of this film and to be able to shoot Cinerama has been something I never would have imagined. It truly is an experience very few people have ever had.
Now that there's a movie made for the first time in 50 years with a dusted off, refurbished camera, I mean, this is really something very historical.
I feel so thankful that I was able to participate in this project.
It was a community of people who loved Cinerama and got together and filmed this little short, and I think it turned out great.
Now we're memorialized in Cinerama. I mean, how many people can say that? So we live on.
If there's a laundry list of people who directed Cinerama films, I get to be at the last one, for whatever that's worth.
And this will probably be the last time that the camera is ever going to run film through it.
That was the last 3-panel shot, guys.
In history.
There will never
Yeah,
be
with the
another
smallest crew. We have no fanfare now.
Yeah, where's somebody blow a trumpet?
Yeah. Unless someone kind of picks up the mantle in terms of this process, we may be the last people on the planet Earth to shoot Cinerama.
There probably is not really a future for the Cinerama process itself, other than in the 3 theaters that you can see it in, and the fact that the movies are now going to survive.
Cinerama was a place and time, and it served its purpose, and we can look back at it and say, okay, this is where it got us from here to here, and then it kind of went.
There is a parallel, I guess we could say, between the abandonment of Cinerama in 1962 with what we're facing today with digital taking over analog film. But this is the way the industry has always been.
And the only reason things get abandoned is if something cheaper or easier to use comes about and fills the same bill.
It's just a natural progression of technology. Maybe for the best, maybe not.
And everything's going to go through an evolution at some point. Film lasted quite a while when you think of Edison and the silent movie, the cranking and the 4-perf and the square image and everything. That's still sort of around in a way.
I'm of the generation that embraced film and loved film. I'm sorry to see it go, and hopefully, it will survive in some form for the future.
If we don't know where we've been, it's hard to appreciate where we're going.
And the Cinerama movies, we like to equate them, the old travelogue movies, are virtual reality time capsules.
But it's very interesting that the technology survives today in a very viable form. All it remains is for someone to actually go out and do it, and that's what we've done within the picture.
And, who knows, 50 years from now, somebody may be sitting here with a 35 millimeter projector behind them saying, I just made the first movie in 35 millimeter in 50 years.
Is this really where it ends, my darling? One thing out of place. One tiny spark in the suit, one tiny spark in the suit. Things come to life and they begin. One tiny crack in the wall, one tiny crack in the wall. Something so fragile and so small. And is this really where it ends? Is this really where it ends, my darling? One thing, one tiny thing out of place.
Would you guys like to be in the movie? We can put you in there, it's no problem.